What's good, y'all? It's your boy Sean Peter Blunt God. Hey! And today we are doing another Berserk chapter read through. Today we are reacting to chapter 32 chronologically. This is chapter 32. I don't know how some of you guys who are big Berserk fans who've been following this much longer than I have would number this chapter, because again, like, the app that I use is a little weird because it kind of rebooted at one point, and now it's like it says it's chapter 17, but that's after the reboot, after we got a bunch of other chapters, right? So but this is chapter 13 chronologically, right? If you go from the very first chapter of Berserk, this would be the 32nd chapter. And the title of this chapter is, for you guys who read the novels and the books, it is Casca, chapter 2. So yeah, so last chapter. Well, before we do the whole recap, make sure you guys hit that like button. Also subscribe, hit that bell for notifications. Make sure you comment your thoughts down below. Follow me on Twitch as well, so you can engage with me in real time. You can let me know your opinions in real time. Also, follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, and make sure you, yes, you, make sure you join the Discord so you can engage with me. That is the best. That's the place I engage the most with people who follow me on Twitch and YouTube, and just people who just like anime in general. That is where I engage the most. So join the Discord. All of these will be in the description box below. But yeah, so okay, again, we are on chapter 32, the 32nd chapter of this series, right? And the name of this chapter is Casca chapter 2. So I'm expecting to get a lot about Casca, right? That's what I'm expecting, just based on the name of this chapter alone. I'm expecting us to get a lot about Casca, maybe some backstory, maybe her and Guts, start to get along at the very least. But I'm expecting maybe even more, maybe a relationship buds out of it. I don't know. Last chapter, what we got last chapter was the ending of that fight where Guts saved Casca from that armor well unit commander, or whatever the army they were fighting. He was overwhelming Casca. Guts comes in, saves Casca, messes this guy up, but he doesn't kill him. Right? He doesn't kill him just yet, but he messes the man's face up pretty bad. And before he could finish, right before Guts could finish the fight, Casca was getting all woozy while she was at the edge of this cliff, right? And Guts notices, and he grabs her by the arm. And as Guts saves Casca, he also gets shot by the same guy that the same commander of the enemy, the same enemy commander, causing Guts to fall off this cliff with Casca into a river that was at the bottom of this cliff. And Guts manages to save both him and Casca from drowning. He performs CPR on Casca to get her breathing, and then he notices that she has a fever. So it was like, this isn't the best place to have a fever, right? It's raining. They was just in this river, right? So he notices this cave in the distance behind the trees. So he takes Casca to this cave, and he treats himself because he also was shot with an arrow in the side abdomen. He treats himself, and then he checks on Casca, realize like, okay, I gotta get her clothes off. He's like, dang, I gotta get her clothes off. This ain't what I signed up for. but she did save me at one point as well, doing the same thing I'm about to do. So it's not like it's something new. It's not the first time that we pretty much cuddled to save one another, right? So, and while he was taking her clothes off, he noticed that she was bleeding. And he was like, hold on, where is this blood coming from? She got an injury. She was injured too. But I guess he realized where it came from, and he was like, oh, must be rough being a woman. So we end that chapter with Guts cuddling with Casca while he has her in her arms, and we just see like them in this cave cuddled up, right? So that was the end of this chapter. Let's get into this next chapter. Okay, so we got this cover page where we see Griffith looking down at a woman who I suspect to be Casca, but she has long hair, right? The Casca we know has short hair. And it's a bit of a flashback where we see Griffith. He says, whether you come along or not is your decision. You know how to fight already, don't you? And then what I assume to be Casca says, but, and then we see the face of Casca, a much younger Casca, with the current Casca right next to the younger Casca. And then we also get a box with Casca riding alongside of Griffith. And then we get Casca chapter 2. So we see the dreamlike sequence or the flashback with Casca saying but ends. And then it fades into the current situation where we see the silhouette of Guts. Guts is like upper body. And Casca is awake now. You know, her eyes are opening. And as she's awake, we see Guts coming into the cave entrance. And he's looking at Casca and he says, yo. And Casca's body's like covered in like tree leaves, or, you know, like those thick tree leaf branches. I don't know what they're called, but they're kind of like they're kind of like similar to Christmas tree, like the texture of the Christmas trees. Like when you get a Christmas tree or whatever, it's kind of like those type of leaves where it's kind of a little thick, right? A little thick. And Casca's looking at Guts in this cave entrance, and Guts is holding his helmet. So Casca's looking, and I think this is Guts talking. He says, where? A cave by the river. Luckily, falling into the river saved us. Casca says, river? And then Guts says, what the heck? You don't remember a thing. After I had it out with that whale jerk, you lost your footing and fell off the cliff. You're pretty easygoing considered we almost drowned. And then Gus says, stupid. Or stupid. And then he says, lie down for now. Or he says, stupid, lie down for now. The fever ain't done dropping yet. So now we're going to, so I'm glad we're a little out. I'm glad we're past the fever aspect, right? And now Casca is up, meaning this means that we could see them talk a little more, right? Like, cause obviously she just overcame a fever, and she's still probably weak. So Guts wants her to recover before they go off and do whatever. So I'm thinking that while they're away from the band of the Hulk, this gives them time to at least form some type of relationship. And I'm not just talking about like the possible Casca and Guts thing. I'm just talking about simply getting along, right? Like, even if there's not a Casca Guts thing, like a romance of any sorts, they can at least get along at the very least, because they're always at odds. Every time we see them, they're always arguing. Casca's always slapping Guts and getting mad at him and crying or whatever. And because Guts is doing some hard headed stuff. So now we could see them maybe get to know each other and why they're the way they are, right? That's what I'm expecting. So Casca is sitting up, and the branches, the leaf branches that she had on are like falling off, and you know we see the breasticles. Of course, we see the breasticles, and she still seems pretty weak. And Gut says, "What could I do? You were soaking wet and freezing to death to boot." and then and then Casca's looking at Guts, and Guts is like holding something. I don't really know what that is. He's holding something. He says, "What's that look for?" And he says, "Here." Like he's giving her something. And then we just see Casca punch the hell out of Guts to the face. Just a straight face punch. God, like that's what you do to the man who saved you. Really, Casca? Is that what we doing? You know, you need to be thankful. You know, I mean, I get why someone would be upset, but come on, you was going to die. This man saved you twice, 3 times, twice at least. You know, twice. You know, he saved you from 3 times. Yeah, 3 times. He saved Casca from getting killed from the commander. He saved her from falling off the cliff by herself. You know, and possibly it being worse. And he saved her from dying of a fever and potential hypothermia, right? Be a little thankful, Casca. Be a little thankful. Guts is clenching his jaw. He says, "Ow, what are you doing? That hurt a lot. That hurt a ton." He says, "Here, I saved you, and now." And I'm assuming Casca threw the armor at Guts because we see... Bro, this panel is so like Guts's face is hilarious. Like we see, I guess Casca's throwing like the armor at Guts, and Guts is like dodging it. But his face is hilarious, bro. His face is hilarious. And Guts says, "Hey, cut that out." You see all this armor getting thrown, and then she even throws a knife at the man. She even throws a knife at, wow, Casca being ungrateful. That's crazy. Why, Casca? Why are you being ungrateful? Why are you being ungrateful to this man? So we see Casca, like, Guts has his back on like a tree, and then Casca is sitting at the edge of the entrance with a cloth over after she just thrown that knife. So Guts is up. He says, "Hello, you finished now? You hysteric bitch." And then Casca's just looking at him. And Guts says, "I ain't trying to lord this over you, but I'm the one who almost died dragging you out of the river with armor on." And then he says, "Instead of one word of thanks, you hurl a knife at me. If you weren't a woman, I'd knock your jaw right out of joint for that." Facts. Facts. And said, then Casca's thinking back to fighting that commander, and when he said, "I can't stomach it. A woman playing at being a knight. Women are inferior to men in strength. What use could they be in battle? Perhaps you even achieved your rank of commander by sneaking into that man Griffith's bedroom." Gus says, "You're already so damn ready to be pissed about something. This is why women ain't cut out to be warriors." And then Guts looks at Casca. Casca's trembling. And Guts says, "What?" And then Casca says, I wasn't born a woman because I wanted to be." And then she's crying as she trembles. Okay. Okay. So I'm getting backstory vibes. That's what I'm getting. I'm getting backstory vibes. Casca is about to tell Guts like everything, right? Like her story. Maybe she might have been abused for being a woman. Maybe she's always wanted to be a boy because she was treated bad for being a woman. You know what I'm saying? Like maybe that's how it was. Maybe she was treated bad because she was a woman, and then that made her wanted to be a man instead. I don't know. We about to learn. I'm getting this suspicious that we are about to learn. Gut says, now she's crying. And then he says, hey, sorry. Not that I really get it. And then Casca like looks at Guts with like this angry look, and then she goes in for another punch, but Guts catches it. And then Guts like grabs her up and like he restrains her and he says, son of a, you really are some kind of bitch. And he says, calm your ass down. Don't make me force you. And then Casca says, let go. Let. Gut says, hey. And then Casca falls to the floor. And she's breathing heavy. And Gut says, I told you. And then I guess some time passes. Because Casca is laying down, on like a little bed made of those leaves. And she's like holding her legs as well. And Gus says, I wasn't wearing it, so it's dry already. Here, put this on. And Guts throws his like tank top at her. Like his undershirt at her to wear. So we see Casca like still crying or sniffing, and Guts says, what? You still crying? And then Casca gets up and says, oh, shut up. Look away. As she puts on the shirt. And then she says, it's pathetic. You're the only one I didn't want to be saved by. And she's sobbing she has the shirt on. Like the shirt is like over her knees and everything. And Guts is thinking, she really hates me. Shouldn't have saved her. And then he says, so, speaking of which, why'd you join the band of the Hawk? Like I said before, ain't it rough for a woman fighting for a living? Okay, so, okay, I keep saying it, but I think this is when it starts. I need to stop saying that because every time I say that, it doesn't. We don't get a Casca backstory. Every time I say that, we don't get a Casca backstory. Casca's sitting there crying, and he says, if you don't want to say it, then whatever. Casca says, Griffith. It's Griffith. Okay, this is a start. This is a start. It looked like she's starting to open up. And then Guts looks and she says, my home village was poor and nestled in the mountain ravine. So, okay, now we getting into it. She says the land was barren and we couldn't really grow much besides oats. Even so, we were bled dry by taxes for the war effort. And we see like a guy like farming with like horses, like two horses pulling like a plow or something. Like I don't know what you call that, but it's like one of them things farmers use. I guess it's one of them things that kind of cut through the dirt so then they could plant the seeds. You know what I'm saying? I think that's what it does. And then we cut to like a snowy, what looks to be a cemetery. And she continues, having to go 3 days without any food was a common thing. People even starved to death in winter. And then we see like a little town, and I don't know if it's under attack or what, but it's like fires, like that the houses are on fire, and we see some people. I'm not sure if they're like soldiers or if they're like the citizens running away from town, but they're like on top of a cliff watching the little town burn. And she says because the village was near the border, it was often involved in skirmishes. When that happened, all we could do was hide in the mountains and watch silently. And our houses and fields were ravaged. Okay, so yeah, those people on the cliff are the citizens, and the people that we see in the town are like the people fighting. You know, they're the soldiers and stuff. And then she continues, it was just like with any other village. We were all used to being robbed and walked over. I too thought that such a way of life was just natural. Okay. So all right, so Casca lived on in a village that was on the border of two warring uh entities, nations, I guess. And the village that she lived on was always ravaged, robbed, all that. They already were paying high taxes for the war efforts, and aside from that, what little they did have got robbed. You know, and they were used to all this, so it's like they probably never ever haven't had anything. You know, which sucked. You know, so we see Casca. She looks like she has like a fishing rod. I don't, or no. She's like plowing. I guess that's what she's doing. She's working on the farm, and she says one day, a nobleman who happened to pass through the village on a long ride caught sight of me. The nobleman approached my parents saying he wanted me for a castle maid. While my father was reluctant, he accepted the offer. So we see this guy, he has like one of them uh pilgrim type hats, those falcon hats, or not falcon, but like the pointy ones. And he is at the door of Casca. And it looked like Casca had a brother, mom, dad, and a brother. That's what it looked like. She continues, there was no other practical answer. My family had 6 children, and strangely, none of us had starved to death by then. I think it was the natural choice for my father to lose his youngest daughter, who wasn't much use as a worker, and yet another mouth to feed. And you could kind of look at it as like maybe her father was trying to help her have a better life. Because if she's a castle maid, she's at least away from that village. She'll probably get fed. She'll have consistent housing, right? So there's that. There's that. There's the fact that it's probably better for her to be working at a castle where she'll have resources than to be living where it's like he's struggling just to feed her and everybody else. Bro, that's a tough choice to make, right? That's a tough choice to make, but you know, hard times like that, man, gonna make people do some crazy stuff. You know, makes sense. You know, it's hard to fault the father, right? He was probably, yes, there was probably some selfishness, like one less mouth to feed. There was probably some thinking like that as well, and like she wasn't as helpful, right? But it was also giving her a better life, you know? So Casca continues, but en route to the castle, we see this nobleman looking at Casca. He has like this creepy grin on his face. Oh boy, I already know where this is going. And Casca is just looking at him, and then he like lunges at her and grabs her wrists. Oh boy. So Casca manages to escape the carriage, and she like runs away from this man. But the man catches up to her and grabs her shoulder. And Casca says, It was obvious when you think about it. This was his aim from the beginning. There's no nobleman whimsical enough to go out of his way to save a destitute girl he's never even seen before. So we see like this nobleman on top of Casca ripping her clothes off. Man, yeah, this tough, man. It's tough, bro. Like cold world out there, man. Like especially back they like people complain about the times now, which don't get me wrong, like times are crazy, but bro, these times people could get away with stuff like this. Like you could do this and get it. You know, it's like, and I don't even think there was really any laws protecting, you know, people from stuff like this. You know what I mean? It's tough. So we see this young Casca, her shirt is just ripped off, you know, her chest just showing, just all exposed. And she's crying and she continues, I can't help it. It's natural. Those two ideas were always in my heart. To me, or to help me stay connected to reality. And then she says, but just then we see like the dude's ear get cut off. Like a slash just cut the guy's ear off. And then we see the blade of a sword behind this man, and Casca's looking, and she's just looking, and we see Griffith on his horse pointing his blade at this man with Casca on the ground. And it's kind of like the light is like shining on Griffith, like he's some angel sent from heaven. And then Griffith says, does being born of nobility mean that you're chosen by God? We see Casca talking to Gus. She says, so strange. It was as if the image of some saint adorning the wall of the village church had just come to life. He was awe-inspiring, an otherworldly spectacle. I thought God had taken pity on this miserable, powerless girl and sent an angel. And we see Griffith looking, and Casca's face is just enamored in Griffith's presence. But then we also cut back to Guts and Casca in this cave, and Guts is just listening. And then we see Griffith take his sword and like throw it at the feet of Casca. And she continues, but what that angel extended to me wasn't a fairy tale like helping hand in my time of need. So yeah, then Griffith throws his sword at the feet of Casca. Griffith says, if you have something to protect, take up that sword. And then we see the nobleman like rush towards that sword. But Casca also rushes at the sword, and she grabs the sword first. I think she grabs it first. Who grabbed it first? Yeah, Casca grabs it first. And the nobleman jumps all over Casca, and she has the sword in her hand, and the guy like goes, why would you jump on somebody with a sword? He did that to himself. He's probably gonna get killed, and he did it to himself. So yeah, Casca's holding the sword, and the nobleman is like, she manages to stab this nobleman, and he still kind of got like this sinister grin on him, like he don't even care. He don't even care. He was just trying to get his rocks off, even if it meant dying. And so the guy falls over and she's holding the sword with the blood on the end of the tip. And Casca says, I was afraid. I don't know whether I stabbed him or if he fell on the blade him by himself. In any case, I killed someone for the first time. I think it was him falling on the blade, for real. He like fell on the blade. And then she says, I was so afraid I couldn't speak or move from that spot. I was never going to let go of the sword with blood dripping from it. So she's like tensing up with the sword in her hand, and Griffith puts his hand over her hand, and like she's shaking. But then it looked like after Griffith consoles her, she calms down. And she continues, he just nodded deeply and slowly. But that was the real helping hand he extended me. And we see Casca has like a little cloth over her head and she's crying. And she continues, the fear didn't vanish completely, but the feelings of guilt and regret faded. His magnificence and the warmth of the blanket he gave me filled my heart. So we see how Casca and Griffith met. Griffith saved Casca from getting raped by this nobleman who was saving Casca by offering her father a job for her at the castle. But his intentions was really to use Casca probably as a sex slave, like a sex slave. That might have been his real intentions. It's just he couldn't pitch that to the father because then the father would have been, he probably wouldn't want to sell his daughter to that type of condition. We see Griffith standing over Casca and what looks to be Judo. So Judo was around before Casca because that looks like Judo. I don't know. We can't really see his face, but the shape of his head and everything looked like Judo. And he says, Griffith, we're finished over there. And we see the band of the Hawk raiding the carriage, the horse and carriage that the nobleman was riding in, and the guy who was driving had an arrow through him. And then Casca thinks to herself, are these people robbers? And then we see Griffith get on his horse and he says, or Casca yells at Griffith and says, wait, what should I do? Griffith says, do as you wish. And Casca says, let me come with you. And we cut, that was her saying that in the flashback. Now she's telling Guts on impulse, those words sprang out from my mouth. And is that Corcus? So you're telling me Corcus was part of the band of the Hawk before Casca, but somehow Casca outranks Corcus and be telling Corcus what to do. Corcus says, hey, don't joke around, girly. We ain't just some thieves. We're collecting war funds so we can eventually set up an army. We see Pippin in the back, Judo, and Corcus says, how can we fight with women and kids along? And then Casca says, I can't go back to my village. If I go back alone and unhurt, the official will never believe that you aided me. He's the same as the nobles. I don't know what I'd use as an excuse when they question me. Besides, it would be a burden on my family. Casca says, please, If you tell me to learn the sword, I will. So, and then I think that is that Judo talking. He says, "Whoa, whoa, she's serious." And then Griffith looks at her and says, "You might die, you know." And then Casca puts her head down, and then Griffith says, "Didn't I tell you? Do as you wish. Whether you come along or not is your decision." Griffith continues, "You know how to fight already, don't you?" And then Casca looks at her hand, which has blood on it, and says, and in the current time, she says, but you were the one who gave me the sword and the blanket." I guess she's talking to Griffith right there. Yeah, she's talking to Griffith. I guess that's not her. When she said "but," that wasn't talking to Casca, or that wasn't talking to Guts. And it says Casca, chapter 2, end. Oh, okay. So yeah, man, that was a good chapter. We start getting some Casca flashback. I'm glad we finally getting some Casca flashback, and we're seeing Casca and Guts. We're seeing Casca actually open up the Guts, because we started this chapter right. Casca woke up, and Guts came in, and she was mad that she was naked, and Guts was warming her up, cuddling with her as she was naked. So she was pissed off. You know, she didn't want to be saved by Guts, and she was throwing stuff at Guts, throwing a tantrum at Guts, and Guts finally calmed her down and said, "Look, hey, I saved you. Chill. Why are you being ungrateful? Chill." And then Casca eventually calms down and starts to open up the Guts, and she tells Guts about how she met Griffith, like what happened. She came from a poor village that was on the border of two warring countries, right? And since her village was on the border, well, first off, being part of the village, they had to contribute high taxes to the war efforts, which was already hard because their land was barren, right? Like it was hard to grow anything other than oats, right? But the little they did make, most of that they had to give in taxes, right? And also the enemy country would also raid and rob their town while they went to the mountains to hide. And so some nobleman came to her father and offered to take her, right? Give her a job as a maiden. And I suspect the father, believing that his daughter will have a better life, as well as it'd be less mouths to feed, he reluctantly agreed with giving up his daughter. You know, I don't think he wanted to, but he did. So this nobleman takes Casca, and he tries to, he tries to R word her, you know, and she runs away out the carriage, but he manages to catch up with her, and rips her shirt off, and continues to try, but Griffith comes out of nowhere and saves Casca, and he gives Casca the sword and says, "Hey, protect yourself." You know what I'm saying? And the guy the guy tries to force himself on Casca again, but in jumping on Casca, she manages to stab him with the sword, and she gets up, and we see the Band of the Hawk robbing the stagecoach that the guy came in on, and they was getting that for like war funds to build their army. And also, Casca was like, "Hey, let me join y'all." The rest of the Band of the Hawk is like, I don't know if we need a woman around, right? You know, you can't be serious. Especially Corcus, because Corcus was part of the band before Casca, apparently, which I didn't know. Corcus and Judah were all part of the Band of the Hawk before Casca, but she manages to outrank him currently, right? So she still asked to join, and Griffith is like, "Hey, I told you could do what you want. If you want to join, do what you want. Long as you know how to fight and could protect yourself, do as you want." So that's pretty much where we leave off at this chapter. Casca, this flashback with Casca joining the band of the Hawk, and I'm expecting maybe we'll get more of Casca and Guts getting along, or Casca being less aggressive towards Guts, maybe opening up, since she opened up about her past. Maybe she's a little more nicer to Guts. I personally think it might be leading to something more with the two, but we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, that is the chapter. Anyway, y'all, make sure you guys hit that like button. Also, subscribe, hit that bell for notification. Comment down below your thoughts on the chapter, your thoughts on the read through, or your thoughts on Berserk in general. Just hold off on any spoilers. Also, follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, and follow me on Twitch. Don't forget to follow me on Twitch so you can catch me live and you can engage with me in real time, and join the Discord. If you want to engage with me, that is the best place to engage with me. That's where I'm usually engaging the most at, on the Discord. You can also submit content to me to react to. If it's One Piece content, I'll react to it on a One Piece reaction stream. If it's other content, I'll react to it on a chill stream or something. But anyway, y'all, it's your boy Sean P, the Bluff God, and I'm out of here. Peace.